Today I want to talk about words on a page, a very small page published by Apple. It's called Search on Apple Podcasts. Apparently, it's the new blueprint, the new secret sauce, the recipe to how to get found in Apple Search for podcasts. And in unsurprising news, it's not telling us a whole heck of a lot. It's not telling us anything that I didn't think they were already doing. And I also don't think it's the whole story. Let's just dive right into this middle paragraph. How search works, perfectly summarized in 3 bullet points across 2 metrics on how they might rank your podcast. For many years, and even today, I still hear podcasters say, hey, don't forget to go to Apple, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes back in the day. It really helps us get found. Ratings and reviews, they didn't put it on this page, so it might not be true. There has never been any proof that it was true, except for maybe 19 years ago. So it's not something we have to continue to say anymore. They have highlighted these 3 areas: metadata, popularity, and user behavior. So let's just dissect that a little bit. Metadata. This includes the show name, the channel name, and the episode title. This is like the no duh moment, right? Like, what's the name of our podcast? So that if people are searching for it, is it there? The episode titles, which are all of your titles to your episodes, right? So looking at those in 2 unique lenses. Number 1, is your podcast name linking up to the brand, right? It's you can't keyword stuff a podcast title these days. We've all tested it, right? Even the word podcast is just, there's no need to put the word podcast in your podcast title, because we all know we're searching for podcasts in the podcast app. But certainly putting things like keywords doesn't help. Stuffing all these keywords in there doesn't help. If it's directly associated to your brand, if it is a very unique name and it's just a name that you've had forever, then sure, go ahead and use it. On the episode titles, these are the more obvious wins, like the guest names that you're interviewing, the key topics, not just putting in stuff that people wouldn't be searching for, like, episode 1001, things like that. You really want to stay focused on what is potentially the keywords that one might be searching for, and then hold that thought, because I want to talk about what you can do outside of the Apple ecosystem in a bit. Popularity is the next metric here that allegedly they're using to weigh the weight of your show. Podcasts with a large followers and plays in Apple Podcasts. This is the bullet point that sort of drives me nuts here, because what they're saying is, hey, if your show is popular, we're going to raise it in the rankings? ? Podcasts with large followers and plays in Apple Podcasts. And that's the issue, because what they're doing is they're ranking the plays and follows just in the Apple ecosystem. That doesn't mean that your show is unpopular if it's not performing well in Apple Podcasts. You might not even choose to list your podcast in Apple Podcasts. That's a thing. You don't have to be in Apple Podcasts. And I just don't like it. I don't like the fact that what they're saying is in the Apple ecosystem, you'll raise in your rankings based on that stuff that goes on there. Because what if you were Google Android, review podcast? You're reviewing all the cool things about Google Android and the best apps for Android, so on and so forth. Presumably, you're not going to do well in the Apple ecosystem, because you're not talking about Apple stuff, and 98% of your audience wants to be on Android. That doesn't mean that you have an unpopular show. It could get millions of downloads. But in Apple land, it's saying, no, you're not that popular. So that's a very unfair thing. So take it with, a grain of salt, or however you see fit. I just don't like that. And there are other ways that we should try to outperform even the Apple stuff. User behavior, this is sort of a throwaway metric for me, because it's kind of the same thing. Podcasts with high engagement, such as those that are played or followed from search results. All this is saying is, hey, if you're doing really well in engagements or plays or follows, that's what we're ranking. So it's sort of like the same thing, in my opinion. So one of the things that really stands out to me is, how do we get this engagement off the Apple platform? This is why it's so important, where if you have the time to do it and the resources, running a, let's say, WordPress website alongside, it doesn't have to be WordPress, but that's the ones we're fans of, running a website alongside of your podcast to rank for organic SEO traffic and keywords and content, having a blog for every episode that has, detailed show notes with the keywords, with the guests, with the links, with the content that's being talked about, because not only is that supplemental content added value to the show, it's also going to help you rank in search engines across the globe, but not just Apple Podcast. And then second to that would be looking at the call to actions for engagements with your listeners. So you're not just relying on your audience to just, hopefully they'll subscribe, hopefully they'll follow, hopefully they'll share. The number one way to do this, like they say down here in this last paragraph, how to improve your ranking. The more listeners engage with your new shows and episodes, the higher they will rank for relevant search terms. So make sure to promote your show and episodes on Apple Podcasts when they launch. Yeah, on Apple Podcasts, but you can also do this in the regular world too. You can have an email newsletter. You can have social media channels. You can have all this stuff that you're out there promoting and making sure that you're getting your listeners to subscribe to the show and share it on social media. Those are the call to actions, like 3 major call to actions that I use verbally and in the show notes is 1, don't forget to go to domain.com/subscribe to subscribe to the show. 2, that's also a place to get an email newsletter sign up. So you want to capture an email newsletter because that's going to help you promote directly to your audience. And then 3, it's getting folks to, engage with you through conversation, take a survey, chat with you on social, donate, join a membership, buy a subscription podcast. These are all things that you're constantly putting on repeat to not only, just improve rankings, but get better engagement. The best thing you can do is connect with the audience, get feedback. How do I need to adjust this content? Hey, listener, what do you want on this show? All of that stuff is very important, and it doesn't have to be in the Apple ecosystem. It shouldn't be in the Apple ecosystem. It should be in your on your website, on your platform, with your brand, with your touch, with the way that you want to go about it. So, hey, here's how to rank on Apple search. Get more people listening to it on Apple. And before we go, and not to just throw that away, look, this is certainly a thing. Conversely, if you have an Apple podcast that's all about Apple podcast stuff, then you want to do everything they're saying here because you want to rank in the Apple ecosystem. There's a lot of great metrics inside your Podcast Connect dashboard, stuff that they don't share with podcast hosts like us. So it's totally viable to look at those stats and look at your podcast host stats to see where Apple Podcasts ranks in terms of listenership with your audience. So if you're on Castos, you can go to your analytics page. You can see what the percentage is of people who listen to your show on Apple Podcasts. And you can make that judgment call. If 98% of the people are listening to your show on Apple Podcast app, well, okay, kind of makes sense. You should really start to pay attention to these types of things. Otherwise, spread the love, spread the connection around the entire open ecosystem, and most importantly, your website, your brand, your email list, your show. It's your stuff. It's your audience. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. We got a bunch of content on this channel on how to rank, on how to do call to actions, on how to get people signing up to your membership, giving you donations. Castos.com to start a podcast. Again, thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. See you in the next video.